Tonight's class is taught by Avery Lewis. To go ahead and skip ahead to that class, check the screen for the time marker at which you can skip ahead to Avery's class. To hear the intro to my channel, a little bit more about my process of teaching, and get connected in different ways, continue listening, and then Avery's class will start right after. Thank you for taking time for yourself, and we look forward to connecting with you. Hi, my name is Kim, and welcome to my channel. You may have found yourself here when you were looking for yoga, yin yoga, anxiety relief, relaxation, something to do with Brene Brown that'll help your day feel better, or maybe you somehow stumbled here through a picture of a cute animal, or we know each other offline. However you made it here, welcome, and I'm glad that you're here. If you are joining me for a yoga class, go ahead and find yourself somewhere you can lie on the floor for about an hour to an hour and a half. And yes, I genuinely mean just somewhere you can lie on the floor. Yin yoga is a practice that can be done on a yoga mat, but can also just be done lying in the middle of your bedroom floor, your living room floor, or wherever you find yourself. We'll be moving through about a dozen or so different poses that might feel like they are simple at first, but the purpose of yin yoga is to find a way to use our breath and our self willpower to sit in the same position for 3 to 5 or maybe even 7 minutes. And while that sounds simple at first and maybe not like what anything you ever thought yoga could be is, over time, we work to ride the edge and the waves of sensation. We never want to push ourselves to a sense of pain, and so if you ever find yourself in pain, please move in a way that feels better for you. But we want to ride the waves of sensation so that we can use the ability to take a deeper inhale, to take a longer exhale, to sit with things that feel new or uncomfortable. Because off the mat, or off the floor, or outside of this moment that you find yourself in, there can be a lot of things that are hard to deal with, a lot of things that are hard to sit with, and a lot of things that you are trying to push away or avoid or take a break from. And it's not a problem to take a break. But when we find ourselves unable to take a pause and just be with ourselves for 5 minutes, we maybe need to take more breaks for ourselves. So think of this time, whether you participate in the movement or not, as a time for you to take a break, to take a pause, and just to give back to yourself. You probably spend hours and hours each day giving your time to someone else in the interest of hopefully something you enjoy. But take this time for you to sit, to lie, to be, and to breathe. Thank you, and I'll see you on the mat.
Okay, so everyone's got blocks and a blanket. If you have a bolster, that might feel nice for the end of the class, but I'm not going to have anything specific with it. It was kind of cold in here when we got in, so I turned the heater on, but is it hard to hear me? Should I turn it off a little bit? Or how are you feeling temperature-wise? Okay, maybe I'll turn that off. Okay. Oh my gosh, it's like making me want to cry being in here with you all. It's like the old days. The before times are back, you know? Wow, this is really special. Is this anyone's first time in the space up in the ballroom? Yeah, you too? Okay, but you know where the restrooms are and stuff over there? There we go. Okay, that's better. Can you hear me better now? Okay, cool. Well, thank you for being here. We're all masked. We've all have vaccines, so hopefully we feel safe in this space. Lots of air movement around here. If at any point in class you feel like you want to get up and get some air or use the restroom or get a drink of water or pop outside, you are welcome to do that. Oh, did we close the door? Okay, thank you. So some of you have kind of already heard this introduction before, but I feel like it's helpful for me to say it every time I teach. And I think it's helpful for all of us to hold it in mind when we're in here practicing together. So I'll just keep repeating it at the beginning of each class. But when Kim and I decided to teach this class on Wednesday nights, one thing that we felt was really important for our mental health was to be able to share the space. So we are alternating teaching on Wednesdays. So one Wednesday I'll teach, and the next Wednesday I get to come practice, and Kim gets to do the same. And so next week Kim will be teaching and I'll be practicing with her, and I would love for you all to be here. We can practice together as students, and that is in part to give us the mental space to do this, and time for our own self-care, and also time to just build community with everyone else. So I hope that we can kind of keep practicing and learning together in this space in that way. Part of our intention for having a weekly practice again was recognizing how disconnected we had become from our bodies over the course of the pandemic, over however many months it's been now, 19 months, 20 months, something like that. And sort of a realization that that disconnection, you know, it was really an effective coping strategy for much of the pandemic to deal with the change and the grief and the pain of being separate from loved ones, and all of everything that's happened in the last couple of years. And also recognition that it's not a very good place to stay long term for an individual and collectively as well. So we were thinking about how, you know, as a community, as a collective, how disconnected we are from our bodies and from each other, and how these systems of oppression that are at last being exposed more publicly, white supremacy and capitalism and patriarchy and racism, all of these things really depend on us being disconnected from our bodies. They depend on our disembodiment, and they depend on us being disconnected from each other. So when we come together in practice spaces like this, it is about self-care, of course. It is about, you know, down-regulating our own nervous systems. It is about taking care of our own bodies, but it's also this really radical act towards community care as well. It's a way that we kind of begin to disrupt and dismantle the ways that these systems of oppression are alive in our own bodies. So that's something we're kind of holding as part of the container of this space, is a way that we enact community care by intentionally inhabiting our bodies. And yoga is such a fantastic tool for doing that, because at its roots and in the core of its philosophy is that, you know, yoga is about freedom from suffering on an individual level and a collective level. It's a recognition that our liberation together is bound to each other's, and that no one of us is free until all of us are free. So yoga in that sense becomes an act of social justice. It becomes a way that we can embody justice. So it feels like a really good tool. These yoga spaces feel like a really appropriate space to be having these conversations and to be intentionally coming into our bodies to do this work in community. So I like to remind myself of that every time I teach, why we're holding this space, and every time that we come into the space together, because I think that it's the work that you can do a little bit and often that has the most impact. You know, we can go to like a weekend workshop or a training somewhere and get a download of diversity, equity, and inclusion information or something like that. But it's just this like one-time event, and it's when we're doing it consistently that we get, you know, like the power of habit, right? That's when we get the greatest change. So I'm hoping that we can like continue to remind each other of that as we come into these spaces. So as I was thinking about this today, and the intention for the practice and the intention for this time together, I was reflecting on this article by Chema Okam called White Supremacy Culture, the Characteristics of White Supremacy Culture. I don't know if anyone has read that. It's kind of related to workspaces, but I think it bleeds into all of our daily lives. And it lists all these characteristics of white supremacy culture as they show up in workspaces. There are things like perfectionism and individualism. Maya's nodding her head. Are you familiar with that article? Yeah. You know, the written word is a characteristic of white supremacy culture, and there's one right way to do things, and one of the main ones is a sense of urgency. And so this is one that's really sticking with me, the sense of urgency, because I feel that even outside of workspaces, that sense of urgency exists in the world and in our lives. And for me, that sense of urgency, all of these things, but sense of urgency in particular, has a very real, I have a very real bodily reaction to that. And maybe similar to some of the things you're feeling right now, Lindsay, as you prepare to start a new job, I feel immense anxiety when I am under that sense of urgency. And the way that shows up in my body is often like a shortness of breath where I'm only breathing into the upper lobes of my lungs. When I have digestive upsets, I have a lot of tension, especially in my neck and shoulders and belly, exhaustion. And then what I do, my body's immediate reaction, my brain's immediate reaction to that is to disconnect, because I couldn't live in that state and get the work done that I need to get done, right? I have to meet that deadline or whatever it is that's causing a sense of urgency. And that's the vicious cycle that's upheld by all of these systems, right? So I'm trying to think about ways that we learn to interrupt that cycle. How do we notice it and then interrupt it so that we can step out of it and actually rebel or resist against some of these characteristics of supremacy culture? So in my experience doing justice work and any kind of community organizing is that, like, while the injustices that we're trying to address need to be addressed immediately, they're an immediate concern, the work that we're able to do is so much more impactful when we can step out of that sense of urgency and step out of scarcity thinking, because it allows us to be more inclusive, and it allows us to get the right voices at the table. It allows us to slow down enough to take in information and process it and make choices that center community care over individual care. And so I bring this up in a yoga class because I think it's an opportunity that we have in this space to really explore what what a liberatory pace feels like, as opposed to an urgency pace. Like, we can actually be in our bodies and we can practice, what does it feel like to move at the pace of my own breath? What does it feel like to move at the pace of a relaxed heartbeat? And then we have a reference point for when we're in our real lives. We're not in sort of the safety of a yoga space like this. We're in our real lives, and we can have a sort of bodily memory of what it feels like to be in alignment with our values, and to be able to recognize, oh, that's actually urgency coming up in me right now. I can take a minute and I can resist that. And I remember what it feels like to be aligned in my values, because I've been practicing that in community already. So I hope I'm making sense, but that's what I'm hoping that we can practice in this space is coming into our bodies in a way that helps us realign with our values, and then having that reference point for when we're not on a yoga mat. So yeah, that's kind of what I'm hoping will flavor the practice tonight. And I, just like last week, I'm recognizing that a lot of the words that I'm saying have violence attached to them, that words like white supremacy and patriarchy and capitalism have very real violent impacts in the world, in history, and currently. And I have a bodily reaction when I say those words. And so I'm wondering if you are experiencing anything like that in your body, or what you might be experiencing in your body as you hear me say those words. So we're going to start this practice right now, where I'll ask you to just close your eyes if that's comfortable, or soften your gaze a little bit. And you can place your hand somewhere on your body that feels grounding to you, maybe on your legs or on your heart or your belly. And I'll invite you just to take a minute and notice whatever bodily sensations are arriving for you in this moment. And if you don't know what to look for, you could notice the temperature of your body, if you feel hot or cold, or if certain body parts feel hot or cold. You might notice the quality or the depth of your breath, or the pace of your heartbeat. You might notice if you have tension in your neck and shoulders, or in your belly. And I'm just going to start naming some things that I'm seeing in the room. So I see a couple of people kind of rolling their shoulders. And I see a little bit of sort of rocking or adjusting to accommodate breath, swaying. And these little movements are ways that we can self-soothe, and they're part of that interruption process. So here we've noticed that there may have been heavy words or content. We are taking a moment to feel what that feels like, and we're leaning on self-soothing practices. Yeah. So that's one step towards embodiment. Okay, let's go ahead and start the practice. We can begin on our backs. And I think it will be helpful if we go ahead and place our blanket on the mat so that we'll have it for some padding a little bit later. And then you'll want to have blocks nearby so that you can access them while you're laying down. So as you're coming to lay on your back, I will invite you to bring your legs in whatever shape feels comfortable. So you might explore bringing the bottoms of your feet to the floor. I see someone in butterfly legs. That's nice too. So whatever feels like it's easiest on your spine right now. And for these first few moments of practice together, I'll invite you just to come into the experience of your breath. So just noticing how your body is moving to make space for your lungs to expand, how your body moves to assist the exhale. And then starting to come into your legs, I'll have you bring your attention down to your feet and just notice your feet. If you have socks on, you might notice the texture of the socks against your skin. If you don't have socks on, you may notice the temperature of the air on your feet or your ankles. And then notice your lower legs and your knees. Your thigh bones. And see if you can relax through your glutes and your outer hips. And then bringing your attention to your belly, you might notice that as you take a big breath in, your belly expands upward towards the ceiling. Similarly, you may notice that as you take a big breath in, your low back inflates a little bit against the floor. Notice the movement in your rib cage as you breathe. That there's sort of a floating motion upward and a fanning outward on your inhale. And then feel into your chest, into your heart space. See if you can imagine where your actual heart, the organ, is nestled between your lungs. So that each time you take a big inhale and the lungs fill with air, they're embracing your heart. And feel into your shoulder blades and how they press into the ground beneath you and how they support your heart space from underneath you. And then let your head be super heavy against the ground. So skull heavy, neck relaxed. And see if you can relax all the muscles of your face. You might notice you've been unintentionally furrowing your eyebrows. You might play with what it feels like to let the backs of your eyes widen a little bit. And then if and when it feels good for you to start moving, you can bring both of your knees in toward your chest. And here you can move in whatever way your body is being called to move. So if you want to find some rocking side to side, that might feel good. It may feel nice to let your knees come right over your hip points so that your low back can get contact with the ground. Right, and then from here, I'll invite you to stretch your feet up towards the ceiling. You don't have to straighten the legs all the way unless that feels good. But I will encourage you to draw your toes towards your face. So you're flexing your feet and press up through your heels. Yeah, stretching through the backs of your legs. And then here, it might feel good to kind of knead the air with your feet, like you're like a cat sort of kneading a blanket or a cushion. And just kind of articulating through your toes, flexing and pointing the feet, maybe rolling the ankles. Sometimes it feels good to point the feet really strongly so you can stretch through the tops of the feet and the shins. Okay. So I just want to do a very quick little exercise here to help you locate some of your muscles that we'll be using throughout the rest of the class. It'll be helpful if you have a foam block nearby. And then I'll have you take your knees so that they're right over your hips, so the feet will come off the ground. Yep, your shins will be parallel to the floor. Yeah. And then take your foam block and place it between your thighs. Yeah. Good. Okay. Don't worry, we're not going to do a bunch of crunches here or anything. I just want to get some feeling. Okay. So your head can remain on the ground. You can keep your neck relaxed, shoulders relaxed. It might be helpful to bring a little activity into your feet. So the knees are bent, and the feet are flexed. Perfect. Okay, so without any engagement in your belly or your legs, just take an inhale and feel your belly be soft. And then a natural exhale. Okay, and then take another inhale, soft belly. And as you exhale, squeeze the block with your legs. Feel your low belly draw down. And then inhale and soften that. Relax any gripping. And then exhale and squeeze. So just do that a few times. So you're inhaling to soften the belly and soften the inner thighs. And then as you exhale, you're squeezing the inner thighs and feeling the low belly engage. And do that maybe 3 or 4 times just so you get a sense of what it feels like to have your inner thighs engaged versus relaxed. Okay, when you have a sense of that, you can take your feet to the floor, remove the block, and then heel toe your feet out so they're about as wide as your mat. And then we're going to inhale, reach the arms up overhead and let them fall to the floor behind you. Yeah. So you're long through both side body, long between your hip creases and your armpits. Yeah, and then take an inhale there. And exhale, let both of your knees fall to one side. And then on your inhale, you can come back through center and exhale over to the other side. And just take this at your own pace. Think about, moving at that liberatory pace. What feels like liberation in your body? What feels free? What feels fluid? That might be like super slow. That might be several breaths per movement. That might mean hanging out on one side for a little bit longer. You might find that as your knees fall to one side, you want to let the opposite hip peel away from the ground. You get a nice stretch through your hip flexor. Okay. So as you feel ready, let's go ahead and bring the knees back in towards the chest. And then we're going to start to make our way to a tabletop position. And there's a lot of ways you can get there. If you want to rock and roll a couple times along the length of your spine, that might feel good. Or you can roll to one side and press up. Make any movements you need to on your way. Okay. So as we're finding tabletop, if you want to, you can place that block between your legs again, or you can just imagine that it's there. And we're going to find a little bit of engagement between the legs, a little engagement of your inner thighs. So we might have like sort of imaginary squeeze of that block. Yeah. Okay, good. So from there, we're going to start to move through some really slow cat-cows, and we're going to lead with the tailbone. So as you inhale, you'll start to reach the tailbone up towards the ceiling, and then slowly let that ripple through your whole spinal column, up through the crown of your head. And then leading with your tailbone, start to curl the tailbone down towards the floor. And then slowly round your whole spine until your head drops. And do that real slow a couple times on your own. Sometimes it helps to close the eyes so you can really get your focus on your sort of internal self. You might actually imagine, try to visualize the shape your spine is making as you move through this. And then once you've had a sort of taste of that, if you want to start bringing different movement in here or a little bit faster movement, you may start to find one breath, one movement as you inhale into cow shape and exhale through cat. Or it might feel good to make some big sort of barrel rolls with your rib cage. See if you can let your body's desires guide you. So if your body is craving a particular movement, just follow that. Just go exactly that direction. I see some people looking over one hip at a time and kind of wiggling side to side. So I'm going to throw out some options for you to explore as you're moving around here. Josh, that's one of them. It might feel nice to flip the orientation of your hands. So spinning your hands around so fingers point backwards. It could feel good to keep doing spinal movement here, but it might feel good just to stay still and breathe into that expansion through your forearms and your wrists. Another option is to keep the hands facing forward and come down onto your forearms and find some cat-cow shapes here. And then a third option, you don't have to do all of these, just an invitation to explore and see what feels good for you. The third option is to remain on your hands, tuck your toes under, knees wide, and send your hips back a little bit, taking sort of a half child's pose, half tabletop shape, and then finding cat-cow from here. So I'm giving you all these options so that you can experiment and see what feels good for you. Because what I hope this class will turn into is a space where all of us can have whatever practice is best serves our body in that moment. So this is an invitation for you to explore what feels good and to be curious about what your body is craving. And you may be choosing something that I haven't suggested, and that's fine too. And I'm going to give us just a minute or so more here. You are welcome to practice this as long as you'd like. I'll know we're ready to move on when we're all in downward facing dog. So you can take your time, and that's where we'll meet up when you're ready. Great. So as you're finding down dog, or puppy pose is great too. If you want to keep the knees down, that's great. As you're finding this shape or some version of this shape, feel free to be exploratory here. You might wiggle the tailbone side to side or pedal out your feet. Notice if you're holding tension in the back of your neck, and see if you can just let the head drop. Yeah, there you go. And maybe focus this first down dog on just getting really long between your armpits and your hip creases. So that might mean taking a little bend in the knees and then reaching your sit bones up towards the ceiling. Yeah. Good. Okay. So we're going to start to warm up a little bit. When you feel ready, you can lift your heels and slide forward into plank pose. Feel free to take high plank or low plank. So you're welcome to bring knees down to the ground here. If your knees are on the ground, just make sure they're a little bit backwards of your hips. Good. Okay, so wherever you're working, push down through your pointer finger and your thumb and try to lift your heart up through your shoulder blades. So you're kind of puffing up a little bit between the shoulder blades. Yeah, good. Okay, let's take an inhale there. And then exhale, downward facing dog. Big breath in through your nose. And then full breath out. And let's inhale, lift the heels, slide forward, plank pose. Your choice, high plank or low plank. Okay, feel your heart reaching up through the upper back. Beautiful. Feel your legs engaged so that they're really supporting you here. And think about if you're in, especially if you're in that high plank, think about squeezing that block between your legs. Can you imagine bringing some engagement through your inner thighs there? And then reaching your inner thighs up towards the ceiling. Good. Okay, inhale there. Exhale, downward facing dog. A big breath in. Full breath out. Inhale, lift the heels, slide forward. This will be the last one. Feel your strong legs. Squeeze that imaginary block between your thighs. Feel your heart reaching up towards the ceiling. And then press the top of your head forward so you're long through your spine. Yeah, perfect. Tailbone reaches back. Big in-breath. Exhale, downward facing dog. Good. Okay, this time as we inhale, we'll shift forward to plank pose. And then as you exhale, lower onto your belly. Good. Take the tops of your feet to the floor. Feel into your legs for a moment. Press the tops of your feet down, engage your legs, reach your tailbone back. Good. And then from there, hands are really lightly placed underneath the shoulders. We're going to inhale up to cobra. So you can lift through your face, your throat, your heart. Feel your shoulder blades draw towards each other. And then exhale as you lower down, heart, throat, and face. We'll do that 2 more times. Inhale as you lift up. Exhale as you lower down. Inhale as you lift. Exhale as you lower. Good. Engage your belly and then press up to a tabletop. Good. And from there, downward facing dog. Good. Okay, so we're coming to a standing forward fold next. You can take a bend in your knees and look forward between your hands, and then walk your feet or hop them forward. And then let's use our blocks for this first forward folds. I'll suggest having them on their highest setting underneath your hands. Good. We're going to keep a pretty generous bend in the knees. So the focus here is going to be on the upper body. And as you inhale, press your hands into the blocks and shine your sternum forward, lengthen your spine. Good. Crown of your head reaches forward. It's almost like you have that cobra shape here. So your shoulder blades are drawing towards each other and down. There's like a little lift through the heart. That'll be our inhale shape. And then as you exhale, fold forward. We'll do that 2 more times. Inhale, halfway lift. Sternum reaches forward. Exhale and fold. Good. This time, take a little bit deeper bend in your knees. Reach your sit bones up and back. Good. Then inhale and lift. Beautiful. Yeah, that's it. Exhale and fold. Good. Okay, from here, we're coming to chair pose. So you can let your seat come back as you sweep your arms forward. Your arms might kind of hover just right in front of you, or you can reach them all the way up by your ears or take them out to a wide V, whatever feels good for your shoulders. Good. Imagine if you had that block between your legs here, and can you give it a little squeeze? Yeah. Okay, let's take an inhale there. And then exhale, push into your feet and stand up tall. And relax your arms by your sides. Okay, so we'll do a little cat-cow shape here too. We'll take a little bit of a bend in the knees and then take your arms out nice and wide to a T. You might be waving hi to your neighbor there. Okay, as we inhale, let's widen through the chest. And then on the exhale, flip your palms and then bring your backs of your hands towards each other as you round your spine. Chin can come down towards the chest. You kind of have the C shape of your body. Good, and then we'll inhale to open. Exhale and round. And do that a couple more times at your own pace. And exhale. It's really sweet to see everybody moving in unison. You look like beautiful birds. It's amazing. Okay, let's start to come back upright to a nice tall spine. You can relax your arms at your sides. And then we'll take the hands to the tops of the shoulders, find a little bend in the knees, and we'll just do some orienting twists like we did last week. So nice and slow at first, just twist to one direction and keeping your eyes open, just look at the room around you. And then twist back through center and over to the other side. Good. So take this at your own pace. We're just trying to sort of take in what is around us visually so you can locate yourself in the room. This is a really nice thing to do if you're feeling anxious or overwhelmed. Just actually take in your surroundings, noticing what you can see, hear, smell, feel. Okay. As you rotate, you might let your eyes look up towards the ceiling and see what's above you. Or you might let the eyes gaze down towards the floor and see what's beneath you. Okay, and then as you come back through center the next time, you can relax your arms at your sides. And then together, push down through your feet. We'll inhale, sweep the arms out and up. And then exhale, hinge at your hips as you fold forward. You can keep a little bend in your knees. Good. Inhale, use your blocks for your halfway lift. And then exhale and fold. Good. Okay, we're going to come to a low lunge. Let's step the right foot back. And we'll bring the knee all the way down to the ground. So if you've got a blanket, it might be useful here underneath your back leg. Yeah. And then I'm going to suggest keeping your blocks, yeah, just like that. So one block on either side of the front foot, probably at its highest setting, so you have plenty of space to breathe. Yeah. It might feel good to kind of inch the back knee back in space a little bit, so you can get a little bit more of a stretch through your back hip flexor there. Yeah, that looks good. Okay. So before we do any movement here, I'm going to have you pretend like you're going to zip your legs together. They won't, that's going to happen. Yeah. So they're not actually going to move in space, but you're going to feel kind of a inward upward lift for your whole body. It's going to be similar to what it felt like when you were squeezing the block. So it's this action of like drawing the legs towards each other. And it's going to start to draw your left hip back a little bit and your right hip forward as you lift up through the core. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay. So from that action, then you'll have a little more stability to inhale and lift your arms. Again, arms can be wide like a V, takes a little more space for the neck, or you might bring them closer to your ears. Good. That looks really good. Okay, cool. Let's take an inhale there. And as you exhale, we're going to twist to the left. So your left arm is going to come back behind you, and your right arm can come down to the front leg for a little support. It might feel good to look back over the backhand. Good. Beautiful. Okay, let's inhale, come back through center. You can lift both arms back overhead. And then exhale your hands down to your blocks. And then we're going to start to walk the blocks back in space. You can lengthen through your front leg. And then just let the toes of that front foot peel away from the floor so you get a stretch through the hamstring of your front leg. Yeah. So it might feel good, or it might feel really intense to lower your chin. You can play around with that. And then nice and easy, let's start to walk the blocks back forward. You can bend back into your front knee. And then we're going to tuck the back toes under and lift the back knee away from the ground. Then from here, take both blocks to the inside of your front foot. And we're gonna start to walk them around towards the long edge side of your mat. Let your feet pivot with you so you come to a wide-legged forward fold facing the side of the room. Good. Okay, so let's let this be fluid. It's the first sort of big wide-legged fold we've done together. So it might feel good to bend one knee at a time and kind of shift your weight side to side. Yeah. It might feel really good to take a bend in the knees. Yeah, like that, Kelsey, take a bend in the knees and stretch your sit bones up towards the ceiling. Good. Okay, so we did some orienting already, so you kind of know where you're at in space. I'm gonna have you keep walking your blocks around towards the back of your mat. You're gonna let your body pivot with you. So we're coming back into a lunge, this time with the other leg forward, our right leg forward. And we're gonna let the back knee drop down towards the floor. Good. Okay. So same action here. Imagining that we're like zipping the legs together. It's gonna give us that little lift through the low belly. It's a similar action as when we were squeezing the block before. So you feel you have some sort of strength in your legs. And then from that strength, you'll inhale to lift your arms. Yeah. And then relax your shoulders a little bit away from your ears. Okay, keep feeling the strength of your legs. Nice. We'll take a big inhale there. And then as you exhale, we'll twist to the right. So we'll let the right arm come back behind us. Left hand can come to the front leg. Okay, and then inhale as you unwind, come back through center, lift your arms overhead. And then exhale, take your hands down to your blocks. And just like before, we're gonna walk the blocks back in space, peel the front foot away from the ground and stretch through the back of the front leg. Good. You can make a choice here about how you wanna position your head and neck. It may feel good to let the chin drop. Okay, and then nice and easy, let's walk the blocks back forward, bend into the front knee. All right, okay, and then we'll tuck the back toes under, lift the back knee. We're gonna gently press your blocks aside, take your hands to the ground and step back to plank pose. Your choice, you can flow through a vinyasa if that would feel nice for your body. You can come rest in child's pose for a few breaths. You can hang out in down dog. Okay. And then taking a soft bend in the knees, we'll look forward between the hands and start to make your way to a standing forward fold. We'll be at the back of our mat, back of the room. Perfect. All right, and you've got your blocks handy here for an inhale, halfway lift. And exhale, fold. Great. All right, so let's go ahead and step the right foot back. We're coming back into a lunge. Nice. Blocks are handy. So let's go ahead and place the right hand on the block that's right next to your foot. Perfect. And then we're going to inhale, lift the left arm up towards the ceiling. Good. Engage your back leg. Don't let it sleep on you. Perfect. We'll inhale there. Then exhale, let that hand come back down towards the floor. Good. Okay, so from here, we're going to pivot the back foot and let it come parallel to what is now the back of your mat, but was the front of your mat. We're going to open up into warrior two. So as you inhale, we'll windmill the arms out and open. Warrior two facing the side of the room. Beautiful. Okay, so one of the things about slowing down and resisting that sense of urgency is having time to be in alignment with ourselves. And one way we might practice that here is slowing down enough to build a posture and finding anatomical alignment. So take a look at your front knee and let's make sure that it's coming over the front ankle. And then make sure you can still see your front big toe. So the front knee is not sort of buckling inwards, but yeah, perfect. Okay. This might be an interesting place to imagine you've got a block between your legs, or imagine that zipping together movement. So if you could imagine drawing your feet together, they won't actually move in space, but you might feel some engagement through your hamstrings. Yeah. And then relax your shoulders. Good. Notice if you're gripping through your toes and see if you can soften the toes, soften the tops of your feet. Okay, so let's move into side angle pose from here. So as we inhale, we'll start to reach forward. You can let your front elbow come down to your front thigh or maybe onto a block, and then we'll let the other arm come up overhead. So there's lots of variations of this. It might feel good to have the front arm sort of in a T shape directly overhead. So you're finding this like really wide wingspan. It might feel good to stretch the front arm over all the way towards the front of the door, and then you get this like big opening through the side body. And I also saw someone else take a variation where they had the front arm wrapped around the back. So that's an interesting thing to play around with too. Good to know your options, right? Okay. So on your inhale from here, let's come back up to warrior two, and then exhale, reverse warrior. Let that back hand drop down towards the back leg, other arm overhead. Okay, nice big inhale there. And then exhale, cartwheel your arms around. We're gonna frame the front foot, so our left foot. Find both of your blocks and take them to the inside of your front foot. And we're gonna walk around this time to a wide-legged forward fold facing the other side of the room. Good, perfect. Okay, so your choice again in this fold. You might find some movement shifting side to side. It might feel good to take a down dog-like shape in the upper body and wide-legged forward fold in the lower body. So walking the hands out a little bit away from the body. Another option you could play around with here, I'm just throwing options at you today so you can make choices for yourself. Sometimes it can feel good to have your hands under your shoulders and experiment with shifting weight on the bottoms of your feet. So you can kind of rock towards the toe side of the foot, maybe gently lifting the heels, and then rock back towards your heels, gently lifting the toes. And just notice how sensation changes in your body as you shift into different parts of the foot. And okay. When you feel ready from here, let's walk the blocks around towards your right foot. So we're coming to the other side, pivoting so that we come back into a lunge. We're facing the front of the room. Good. We're going to place our left hand this time down on the block. And then as we inhale, we'll lift right arm up towards the ceiling. Okay, and keep the back leg alive so it's supporting you. Nice. So take an inhale there. And then exhale as you lower that hand back down towards the floor. We're going to pivot the back foot, coming to warrior two on the other side. Inhaling as you sweep your arms out and open. Good. And then slowing down enough to find our footing. Right, so letting the front toes face forward, front knee comes over the front ankle. We can still see the big toe of the front foot. Tops of the feet are relaxed, toes are relaxed. You can play around with different ways of engaging your legs here. Again, you might draw the legs towards each other as if you were kind of drawing the edges of the mat together. Or you might play with pushing the feet down and drawing them away from each other. And just seeing what supports your body in the shape best. Soft through the shoulders, soft through your jaw. And let's come into side angle pose next. So we'll start to reach forward and let the front arm find either your front thigh or maybe a block. And the other arm will sweep overhead. Again, lots of options for that. So you might find the big sort of open T shape, this long wingspan. Or you might stretch that floating arm all the way towards the front of the room, finding a lot of length between your left fingers and your left ankle. You might come into that bind and let the back arm wrap around your body. Good. Okay. So on an inhale, let's come back to warrior two. And then let the exhale, reverse warrior. Your back hand can drop, front arm lifts. And nice big inhale there. And then exhale, cartwheel your arms around to frame your front foot. We'll set the blocks aside. You can take your hands down to the ground and then step your front foot back to plank pose. Again, your choice. You can move through a vinyasa here. You can press back to a child's pose. You can hang out in down dog. I'm noticing that most of us are in child's pose. So let's meet up there whenever everyone is ready. Okay, when you're feeling up for it, let's go ahead and come to a tabletop. And then come back to rest on your knees. So I had thought it might be fun to play around with camel pose today since we were doing that yesterday. But we haven't done a ton of prep for it. So I think maybe we'll try it, but we'll just go real easy. It'll be like a little baby camel. It might be nice to have a foam block for this. So camel pose is a kneeling pose where we'll find some extension through the spine. You've probably seen some images of people doing this where they're in like a giant circle and their arms are all the way down by their feet. We're not going to do that today. We're just going to come into like a little tiny version of this. I like to have a little padding under my knees. So I'll come to the edge of my blanket. I think it could be interesting to play around with a block between your legs as we've been experimenting with. Because if you can get some of that inner thigh engagement, you can find engagement through the core, which will support that back bending shape. So if you want to try this, you can place a block between the thighs as you come to kneel. We're not going to be moving back very much. I want us to think about moving up. So actually like lifting the sternum up, which would support eventually coming into a bigger back bend. So if you've got the block between your legs, or even if you don't, you can imagine having one there. And we're just going to kind of give that block a gentle squeeze so that you feel your legs engaging. And there's some sort of ripple effect of engagement through your low belly. You might even just like touch your low belly for a second and feel for that. And then I like to take the heels of my hands and place them on either side of the sacrum. And then there's a sort of drawing together of the elbows. it doesn't have to be drastic, but just enough to kind of open up through your chest. And here, you're already in the pose. This is camel pose. If you want to find a little bit more, you can start to reach the sternum up towards the ceiling, and that might encourage a little bit of a back bend through your upper back. And then rather than sort of dumping your head back in space, think about bringing your ears back or the sides of your throat back so you're still staying long through your neck. And what I find here is it's hard to find big breath. So see if you can concentrate your breath so just under your collarbones. Let's stay strong through your core. And relax your jaw. And then as you're ready, you can lift your head back over your shoulders, release your hands, remove the block, and just come to rest back on your heels for a moment. Even doing that pose in a sort of small baby way can bring up a lot of sensation in the body. So just take a moment here and to feel into that. I always have an urge to find the opposite movement after doing something like that. So if that's feeling like something you're experiencing too, you can take an inhale, reach your arms out wide. And then as you exhale, give yourself a big hug. Just cross one arm over the other. You can either reach for your elbows or reach for your shoulder blades. And just see if you can send your breath backwards between the shoulder blades, backwards through your mid-back. And then let's inhale, open the arms wide. And then exhale, cross the other arm on top. And let's inhale, open the arms wide. And then exhale, just let your fingers fall down by your sides. We had some requests for some neck and shoulder stretching, so I think I want to try to fit that in here before we come down onto our backs. If you need to find a different seated position to be comfortable for another couple of minutes, you might sit on a couple of blocks or come to a cross-legged shape. So however you find yourself seated, let's go ahead and reach the fingers down by our sides and kind of hover them a little bit away from the body. Get pretty active through your hands. So there's some active stretching down towards the floor. Then inhale as you sit up really tall. And exhale to bring your left ear towards your left shoulder. This might feel like plenty of sensation. If you want a little bit more, you can take your left arm and drape it across your head. And you're not going to pull on your head. You're just going to kind of gently release a little bit of weight from your arm into your head. Just gentle, gentle. And then let's go ahead and take the left fingertips to the left temple and gently guide your head back upright. And we'll re-stretch out the arms. Inhale, nice and tall. Exhaling, right ear towards right shoulder. And then maybe you find your right arm, drape it across your head. Again, you're not pulling, you're just gently releasing the weight of that arm. And then go ahead and take your right fingertips to your right temple and carefully guide your head back upright. Okay. We'll just find a brief meditation here before we start winding down, coming back to our backs. If it feels comfortable, you can close your eyes. If you'd rather have your eyes open, you can just softly gaze, or you might look at the candles at the front of the room. And after having done some movement, it can be nice to check in once again with your breath. And it might feel nice to kind of follow the trail of your breath with your mind. So watching your breath come in through your nose and down your throat and into your lungs. And then watching it move back up and out, lungs, throat, nose. Now, as you're following that in and down movement with the inhale, you might imagine that your breath can move even farther down towards the belly, towards the pelvis. And feel sort of the cylindrical expansion there, so that as you're breathing in, you're expanding forward into the front body and also through the back body and the side body. So there's the cylindrical expansion as you inhale, and then there's this gathering in, this sort of hugging of your body around itself as you exhale. As I think about what it means to move at a liberatory pace, I think about being able to access this kind of breath. What would it feel like if you could access this at any point throughout the day? And if our justice movements could move with this at the heart of them? So many of the things that we're trying to do in the world could be done with such coordination and care if we moved at this pace. I'm going to give us some time to make this next transition. So there's no rush to move or get anywhere. We're going to start making our way down onto our backs. I don't think you're going to need any props, but if you want to have a bolster nearby for our final pose, which will be coming in a little bit, you can have that handy. You might want to layer up, put your jacket back on, your socks. If you have any other movements you want to do before we start to wind down, this would be a good time to make those. So as you are coming down onto your back, I'll invite you to bring the bottoms of your feet to the floor. And let yourself start to reorient to this position. So noticing the ground underneath of you, the ceiling above you, the walls around you, feeling their different relationship to gravity in this position. And then we'll take a couple of figure 4 shapes here. So let's start with the right leg, and you can cross your right ankle over your left thigh. That might feel like enough for today. You might just breathe into that openness. If you want to find a deeper stretch through your right hip, you can start to bring the left leg in towards you, maybe using your hands for support. You could thread your hands around the left thigh. And we'll let the emphasis be on big, full exhales. And then you might choose to stay right here, or if it would feel good to come into a twist, you can let this whole figure 4 structure fall to the left so that your right foot comes to meet the ground. I usually hold on to my right ankle here. And then it might feel good to extend the right arm overhead, let it fall behind you. And then you can unhook your legs first and then bring them back through center. And we'll find that same shape on the other side. So left ankle crosses the right thigh this time, and maybe you just stay right there. Or perhaps you bring the right leg in towards you. And then if it felt good on the other side, you might choose to let this whole figure 4 structure fall to the right. The bottom of the left foot touches the floor. Maybe you're using your right hand to hold on to your left ankle. And then you might choose to let the left arm reach up overhead. And then carefully unwind your legs and then bring them back through center. And we'll draw both knees in towards your chest. And then it might feel good to come into a happy baby pose here, grabbing for the bottoms of your feet, taking your legs wide, maybe lengthening one leg at a time. And we're starting to come to that final resting shape for the practice. If there are any other movements you want to make, you can do them now. If you feel ready to settle in, it might feel good to get cozy with your blanket. You can place a blanket across your body or let a folded blanket come across the belly for a little extra weight. If you have a bolster, that could feel nice under your knees, or you're welcome to use it in any other way that feels good for you. So as we're settling into this final shape tonight, we'll do a brief body scan. You can take your attention down to your feet, your toes, your ankles. Maybe just wiggle the toes a bit. And then let your attention move up the length of each leg, through the lower leg, the knees, the thighs. Notice where your legs connect into your pelvis. Allow your belly to be soft here. Relax any holding around your heart, your chest, your shoulders. Letting both arms feel heavy against the ground. Let the floor receive the full weight of your head. Relax through the mouth and the jaw. You can let the tongue come down from the roof of the mouth, so letting there be a little space between the top and bottom rows of your teeth. Letting the throat relax. Allowing your cheeks to hollow against the mouth. Eyes can be heavy in their socket. forehead soft. And take a couple breaths to really settle in here. So you can exhale all the way. And then take an inhale breath. And as you exhale, let your front body relax down into your back body. And do one more breath like that, a full breath in. And then let your whole body relax into the ground. And then you can release all control of your breath. As you rest here in Shavasana, I will remind us what we practiced this evening. We started by naming the truth of things and noticing what that felt like in our body. And then we named the ways that we can self-soothe. We practice moving in unison, a recognition that we don't act in isolation and that we are connected to each other. We practice orienting, noticing and being aware of our surroundings. We practice being aware of each other and that there were other bodies in this room with us. We built resilience through movement, practicing flexibility in the spine so that messages can travel easily between our brain and our body. We practice finding strength in our lower body, grounding, feeling into the floor and our own power, so that we could find free movement through the upper body. And in general, throughout the practice, we practice sensing ourselves from the inside out. We practice inhabiting our bodies, noticing what it felt like to breathe, paying attention to sensation and what it feels like when we move at a liberatory pace, what it feels like when we move with care and consideration of others. With that in mind, you can start to make some little movements through your hands, your feet, your head. Those little movements might grow into bigger movements. You might stretch your arms up overhead and feel the length of your body from your fingers down to your toes. And we're going to start to make our way up to a seated position. When you feel ready for that, you can roll over onto one side and use your arms to press yourself upright. As we close out the practice tonight, I'll invite you to bring your hands somewhere meaningful for you. You might come to prayer hands or place hands at the heart. I bow in deep gratitude to the lineage of yoga, of which I am a guest. I bow in gratitude to all of the native tribes of this land who have stewarded and cared for the land for generations and continue to do so today. And I bow to each of you and the community that we cultivate here in this space. And with that, I'll invite you to take a couple of breaths with me to close out the practice. You can start by exhaling all the way. And take a deep breath in. Full breath out. We'll do that one more time. Breath in. Breath out. Thank you so much for being here tonight. I appreciate you all.